I am going to show you the fastest and easiest way to learn to steer a car. Welcome back. If you don't know me, I'm Josh, a driving instructor. I teach people to drive day in, day out. And today I'm going to share with you the fastest way that I teach people how to steer. And it's pretty important to me because I'm the silly fool that has to sit next to them and grab the wheel every second until they can do it themselves. We are going to be covering seating position. How important is it where you look, how you hold the wheel, how to actually turn the wheel, and we're also going to look at how to position the car on a straight road. And finally, if you have your driving test coming up, the end of the video is going to have lots of driving test tips for you. So stay tuned. Let's go. And that leads us to the beginning of the story, which is the seating position. Ideally, for your steering wheel, you don't want to be too close to the wheel. This is obviously not a good seating position. I'm far too close. I'm not comfortable. I've got no power to steer because my arms are trapped. In fact, it's quite claustrophobic. On top of that, if the airbag goes off, that's going to be bad because I'm far too close. There's nowhere for the airbag to inflate. This is too far. I can tell because I'm having to slightly lean forward and my head's coming forward to actually hold the wheel. If I'm driving long distances, this is going to get really uncomfortable. Now the sweet spot is when you can put your wrist on top of the wheel and have an ever so slight bend in your arm. You don't want to be pulling forward, that means you're too far. You don't want a huge bend in your arm, because that means you're too close. Just an ever so slight bend with your wrist resting on top of the wheel. That's going to be the perfect distance for you to steer. Now we just need to figure out how to hold the wheel, so that leads us to hand position. Now imagine your wheel is a clock. 12 o'clock at the top, 6 at the bottom, 9 and 3. There are two highly recommended ways to hold the wheel. The first one is the 10 and 2, and that's where one hand's at 10 and one hand's at 2. The second one is the 9 and 3. It doesn't actually matter how you hold the wheel, provided that your hands are in the top half of the wheel. I'm going to show you this as an example, just as a demonstration. I'm definitely not advising you do this, but just to show you what the car is going to do if you aren't holding the wheel. The point is, a car is just like riding a bike. It naturally wants to go forward, so your hands are there just to guide it and keep it on the straight and narrow, rather than constantly adjusting left, right, left, right, left, right. When we're driving, we want really loose hands on the wheel just to help guide the car, keep it in a straight line with ever so slight adjustments every so often. When we hold the wheel with a white knuckle grip in that wheel, we tend to hold it tight and we tend to become quite tense. And if you see I'm leaning forward when I grab it because my shoulder blades are coming together and now I'm driving tense. We don't want to drive tense. That's bad. It's not going to be comfortable. You're not going to feel good about that at all. You can tell if you're holding the wheel too tight as well, because what's common is you'll over adjust and you'll end up with a wobble. If you look at me here with this wheel, I'm constantly turning left, right, left, right, left, right. Just slight adjustments, and the car's not really doing anything. It doesn't really need any adjustment. The other problem with holding the wheel too tight is it makes changing gear far more difficult. Because we are gripping the wheel so tight, when we take one hand off, the force on the wheel is no longer equal, so your right hand ends up pulling the car over to the left or pulling it to the right. And as you're trying to change gear, then you panic and you end up going into the curb or completely messing your gears up. If you are doing this, a really quick and easy way to practice this is practice taking one hand off the wheel for 3 to 5 seconds before changing gear, just to make sure that you're quite happy with where your car's going in the position, then change gear, then gently put your hand back on the wheel. This will train your hands and your brain to hold the wheel loosely and not panic when changing gear. Now we are holding the wheel perfectly. That brings us on to the part of where should we be looking? And this is possibly the most important part of the video. The biggest part of steering is looking as far down the road as possible. Because like a game of darts, you can't throw darts at the bullseye without staring at the bullseye. Driving is exactly the same. The further down that road you look, the more likely you are to stay nice and straight. And there's a really good experiment you can do with this. First of all, find yourself a really long road. Now find a close object right in front of the car and a far away object, maybe a tree right at the end of the road. Then stare at the objects directly in front of your car. You'll see that you won't be able to see anything far down the road. Now instead, stare at your object at the end of the road and you'll be able to see everything close and far away. This is because we have peripheral vision, which is very, very good at close ranges, but terrible at long ranges. Which means we always look and focus on the furthest distance, and our peripheral vision will still see everything else on the road. The other problem we have is when people learn to drive, they tend to focus on the objects they don't want to hit, which when you're going down a road is normally going to be the oncoming cars. The problem with this is your hands follow your eyes. As we talked about with the dartboard example, when we stare at something and we're driving, we tend to go in that direction. Or sometimes we panic so much, we'll go in the completely opposite direction. The problem is when you're on a nice straight road, you don't want to go in either direction, you need to go straight. As we're driving down the road, we've got a big fat lorry coming the other way. What tends to happen when we're learning to drive is we end up focusing on the danger, the lorry. We don't want to hit the lorry, so we stare at it. This either makes us do one of two things. One, we turn towards the lorry, or two, we turn away from the lorry and end up hitting the curb. Essentially, when you're driving down a road, if you start staring at the oncoming car, you end up getting tunnel vision. This is terrible in meeting traffic situations when you've also got the parked car. Always try to explain to students which one's going to dodge you, not the parked car. And then we end up getting tunnel vision and ending up turning one way or the other, and then the instructor has to grab the wheel. Instead, where we want to focus is where we want that car to go, which is the nice central position between both the cars. Easier said than done, I know, but takes practice. So remember, eyes on the road, not on the danger, stay in control and don't be a stranger. The other really common place people have a problem with steering is at junctions and roundabouts. Here's an example. So we're approaching this roundabout, we're giving way to the right, so we have a look to the right. But we end up looking too long and carrying on driving into the roundabout because it's clear, but we keep staring to the right. Now the problem with this is because you're not looking where you're going, you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to steer into the roundabout because you're not looking where you're going, or you're going to steer away from the roundabout going into someone else's lane. Easiest way to avoid this is make sure you're looking around the roundabout where you're going the second that you cross the white line. So remember, it's always eyes, then steering, not steering, then eyes. Now we are looking like bosses, let's learn how we can steer and keep a nice central position on a nice straight road. The first option is to use your wheel as your central road position. If you position your steering wheel in the centre of your lane, your car will stay in the centre of your lane. So anytime you need to readjust, just position, wheel, centre of the lane, perfect. The second option is to position your left leg in the centre of your lane. So a nice straight left leg, position that, imagine your left leg is in the centre of your lane and your car will also stay in the centre of your lane. If you're finding you keep hitting the left curb when you're going down straight roads, it's going to be related to where you're looking. You're probably looking at the oncoming car or the oncoming danger too much, which is causing you to edge over to the left. And this is really common when we're learning to drive. Now we can stay straight, let's figure out the best way to actually turn the wheel. Now there are two recommended ways of turning the wheel. The first one is known as the pull push, and that's when you put your hands as close as you can together on the top of the wheel, and you use one hand to pull the wheel in the direction you want to go. For this example, we're going to go left, and I'm using my left hand to pull the wheel round to the left while the right hand mirrors my left hand and meets it at the bottom. Now with this, your hands stay on their equal sides of the wheel. They never cross over. Now to straighten back out, the right hand will pull the wheel back to the bottom, and then my left hand will push, continuing until the wheels are straight. Essentially, with the pull-push method, you are actually only steering with one hand, although the other hand is in contact with the wheel. Now, most basic bends, you're only going to really need to pull, probably not going to need to push as well. If it's a really gentle bend, you can probably just hold onto the wheel and turn. But I wouldn't recommend this if it's any more than a quarter of a turn. If you need to do a lot of turning, such as a 3-point turn or a reverse bay park or something that requires more than a 90-degree turn, you might want to use the hand over hand method. And that's when you turn the wheel and you cross your hand over to the other side, giving yourself extra power and extra turning maneuver. And that's essentially the opposite to the pull push, where you use your right hand to push the wheel round and your left hand to reach all the way over and start pulling the wheel. And that's going to help you turn the wheel much faster than you would doing the pull push maneuver. If this is helping you, don't forget to subscribe. The really important part of straightening the wheel back out is to not let go of the wheel, because what can happen is you've then got to try and catch the wheel on the perfect turn. And if you get it wrong, you're going to either underturn or you're going to overturn into the wrong side of the road, both of which are not good for you or anyone else. Here are the tips that you just need to remember. Always look as far down the road as you can. Buy a t-shirt on QWERTY using code JOSHTDI. Snuck that in there, didn't I? You didn't see that coming. Always keep two hands on the wheel unless you're signaling, changing gear. Don't hold the wheel too tight. If you hold the wheel too tight, things are going to go wrong quick. You're going to over adjust and you're going to be too focused on what's going on directly in front of you. You're not looking far enough down the road. Don't forget to look at my online driving course, joshthedrivinginstructor.com. It's going to massively help you with your driving test. Sorry, I snuck that one in again, didn't I? Apologies. No more, I promise. And most importantly, don't stare at the danger. Look at where you want to go. This is the biggest issue people have with steering. Here are some driving test questions and tips. Will I get marked down for letting go of the wheel when I'm steering? If you've clearly let go of the wheel when you're steering, yes, you're going to end up with a serious fault. If you let go of the wheel with one hand and you're steering and your car goes sideways and potentially hits a curb, again, you're going to probably end up with a serious fault. Do I have to pull push to steer? No, you don't. Provided you've got full control of the car, honestly, you can hold the wheel however you like. But the examiner would probably prefer to see your hands at the top of the wheel doing the 3 and 9 or 10 and 2. But no, they will not mark you down provided you have full control and don't do things like hit the curb or go on the wrong side of the road. All the basics. Can you reverse with one hand? Yes, you can reverse with one hand. I often do. One hand behind chair, helps me turn my head, and one hand on the wheel, no problem at all. And that is everything. If that's helped, have a look at my roundabout video right here. It will show you everything you need to learn about roundabouts. Thank you very much and goodbye. Boom.